Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Dr. Adrian Cable, Vice President of Research and Development at Lifesize, and you're watching episode 2 of my series on advanced collaboration. What is advanced collaboration? Well, it's how we use new technologies while we work and learn to go beyond just video and voice, with the focus on tools that help you actually do work as well as just talk about work. And those tools include things like whiteboarding, a renewed focus on content, the actual material that we work on together, rather than just how we discuss it, and improving productivity wherever you choose to collaborate. And today's topic is hybrid work, the changing face of work from home. So first of all, what is hybrid work? Well, work from home always used to be second best. Most of us spent our 9 to 5s or sometimes our 7 till 9s in an office where people have kind of developed tools and techniques for being super productive based around the concepts of physical space, dividing the space up into cubes, offices, open areas, meeting rooms, conference rooms, and processes to make work in that kind of environment. And then, of course, March 2020 came, the pandemic hit, and now, instead of working here, most of us are working here, which is a very, very different kind of environment. And so hybrid work is about developing the right processes and discipline as well, and learning essentially a new set of tools to use and how to use them so you can work productively from anywhere, rather than workdays being organized around people being in a particular place, like the office, and other environments like your home being second best. And what we're seeing now from a range of employers is that work from home, at least some of the time, will stay the new normal. So, we're already seeing companies promoting work at home indefinitely to optimize their real estate footprint and making work in the office something that happens on an occasional rather than a daily basis. But in this new environment, you need new tools, new techniques to really work productively. And many of those are non-obvious. So today we're going to focus on some of the key differences between how face-to-face work works and how remote work works, and how we can bridge the productivity gap between the two. So it's worth saying that most people have spent a whole lifetime of working in an office and developed habits and processes that work in that environment, but have only now just started working from home as a default. And when people do that, one of the things that people realize is that a lot of things don't work as well as they do in the office, especially things like spontaneous meetings where you overhear somebody talking about something, you go over to their desk and join the conversation. Those kind of interactions don't happen when you work from home. And in fact, although most things that are done face to face can be done remote, there are significant differences between how you work best in those two environments, which means that just trying to go remote cold turkey can end up being super inefficient, often without you realizing. And so it's helpful to break down some of the differences and then, with an eye to those, tune your own processes to accommodate. And we've now at least had the best part of a year to learn what works and doesn't work when moving to a home-based environment, and why. And it turns out that there are 5 key ways in which in-person work differs from work at home, from working from home. At first, it's worth looking very high level at what our workdays consist of. And in fact, most of our workdays consist of really switching back and forth between 2 activities, talking and doing. Now, digital and remote tools offer very good replications of in-person, face-to-face interactions when what we're doing is talking. There's Zoom, Lifesize, Teams, Slack, many, many tools that offer great video conferencing based solutions. And the vendors call them collaboration tools, but really they're just talking tools. But they work very, very well. and they're very successful, and we use them all every day. But while talking moves very naturally into the home environment with these kinds of tools, doing, on the other hand, isn't so great when you're digital and remote. And the reasons is that how you do stuff when the people that you're working with aren't physically next to you is very different than what happens when you're working in person. Well, I'll cover the 5 key differences. So the first is it's what we call multimodal versus siloed. So in person, doing is multimodal. What does that mean? It means we use many different tools, many at the same time. So in a typical meeting, we might write some stuff on a whiteboard, then we might sit down on our laptop and put some numbers in a spreadsheet, then present that spreadsheet on a large screen and move to that spreadsheet. Then we might take a table from that spreadsheet and put it into a slide and email that around. So we're working on lots of different types of content using lots of different tools, and we're able to very often just physically move between one and the other very, very seamlessly. And different people in a room can work on different tools at the same time without bumping into each other. So the result is flexible, efficient, seamless transitions across different kinds of content. In contrast, when you work digitally and remote, it's what we call super siloed. Every product does its own thing. Google Docs does one thing, Captivo does one thing, Figma does one thing. And there's no way to integrate them and move between them, and move content between them seamlessly. You just have a load of browser tabs, a load of apps, and you have to switch between them. And so productivity drops due to this kind of unintegrated, inefficient workflow. So what do we do about this? Well, this is an industry-wide problem that these tools for collaboration over content don't work well together. And there's no great solution to this at present, but we're working on technologies to help. And we'll talk about this more later in the series. Difference number 2 is differences in structure. So in person, doing is fluent in structure. You don't need to decide the structure of a meeting in advance. You create the structure as you work. So for example, content that you write on a whiteboard can start off as bullet points. It then can become a list of numbers, then it can become a table, then it can end up in a PowerPoint slide. And so you don't have to think, where's the end game in this meeting? What's my final form of work going to look like? Because you can evolve it and change it very easily as you go along. It's what we call fluent structure. On the other hand, doing stuff digitally and remotely, it's over-structured, it's over-constrained. If you start off doing stuff in PowerPoint, it's very, very hard to then move that over to a spreadsheet, especially if it's a Google spreadsheet. And so you have to work to decide the structure in advance of content, which is usually unnatural and suboptimal. So what do we do here? Well, we need to spend more time upfront when working remote planning meeting structure because it's hard to change during a meeting. But there are tools that can help with this, and we'll cover some of these in our talk next week. Difference number 3. Self-organizing versus chaotic. So in-person doing is effectively self-organizing. You're working in rooms on a desk where there's a finite amount of space. You're writing on a whiteboard, which has a limited physical size. So you naturally organize content as you work. So you erase stuff on whiteboards that's no longer relevant. You file papers on your desk that you no longer need. So it's straightforward to keep workflow bounded and concise. This happens naturally. When you're working digitally or remotely, however, doing is chaotic. There are no space or scale limits when you're working digitally. Finding a file emailed to you a few weeks back or something in your downloads folder is super hard because there are 10,000 other emails or items in your downloads folder you have to sort through. Because there are no space limits, there's no self-pressure to organize as you work. The result is you have what we call the under-pruning of information. You have information overload, making finding things very difficult. And we've all seen where somebody shares a file with us and we have to say, hey, can you send us the link again? Which creates the problem even worse. It creates even more clutter. And this problem makes efficient and organized work over long periods of time hard. Fortunately, this one is easier to fix. You just have to be disciplined enough to treat your digital space more like your physical space and deliberately carve out time to organize each day. And there are philosophies that are pretty well known, like inbox zero, where you aim to have no messages in your inbox each day. So everything in your inbox is either processed or deleted or categorized and put in another folder. But you can extend that to download zero as well. So your downloads folder is basically a map of all the things that you're currently working on, not a clutter of 10,000 disorganized files going back years and years. Difference number 4 is what we call democratic versus autocratic. So in person, doing is democratic. Me and you can review a deck together in front of a laptop. Either of us can press keys on the laptop to advance the slides. We can take our own notes. There's no presenter or viewer distinction. We just naturally slip and slide between those roles as we need to be as productive as we can. When you're digital, though, the tools tend to be autocratic. They enforce a presenter-viewer model. You screen share a deck to review, but the person actually talking has to keep asking you forward a slide, back a slide, because they can't control your screen. Or you screen share a video that you want to review with your marketing team, and your team sees jerky, blocky pictures and out of sync sound and can't make their own edits because screen share isn't designed for sharing video. So the result is that mutual collaboration over general content is difficult without using many individual, specialized, often expensive apps that don't work well together. So what to do about it? Well, there are already solutions for specific problems. So Microsoft Teams, for example, can present PowerPoint slides and allow others to advance back and forwards. But if you're using Google Slides, then you're basically stuck, right? And there's no general solution today to this problem. So it's really, again, more about upfront organization and making sure that that any content that's presented in a meeting is in common storage where everyone can place their content and access, rather than relying on these very strict one-way tools like screen sharing. Finally, in person, doing is balanced. Me and you can brainstorm on a whiteboard. We can both write whatever and wherever we want, separately or together. And the result is powerful ideation. We're all equals. We can all work together, collaborate together, ideate together. And it's very low frustration. When you're remote, though, you have a kind of hierarchy of tools, right? I may have a whiteboard in my meeting room or my home office, but you don't. So we have to kind of settle with the lowest common denominator here, and that dampens creativity. I can't reach out over the miles and write on your whiteboard. Now, there are tools like interactive whiteboards, Google Jamboard, Cisco WebEx boards that allow two-way whiteboard-like collaboration. But these were designed both from a size point of view and from a price point to be office tools rather than work from home. They're large, they're expensive, and so we definitely expect to see new products emerging to address the need for kind of two-way visual collaboration that is suitable for remote work, whether you're in an office, a home, or in another environment. Everyone handles these differences differently. And depending on the kind of work that we do, they may have more or less of an impact. So what I personally find helpful is worth keeping a micro journal of things I do during the day. Just short notes every time I have a meeting, every time I have an interaction, a sentence about what worked and what didn't. And then at the end of each day, I can essentially review what happened during the day. I can find the things that work well, the things that didn't, and I can develop my own solutions. And you'll find that doing this for just a week or two will lead to huge gains in productivity when you're working from home. Now, despite all the tools and technologies that we have at our disposal, work from home still goes wrong sometimes. And I'm going to show a few examples of this just to add a little bit of levity to the end of this talk. So cameras don't work. We've all gone into meetings where things don't look quite right. This is a pretty horrendous fail of a House committee meeting with some virtual background and the camera being upside down. That fortunately wasn't as embarrassing as the next example. We've all done meetings with the camera off where we're not fully dressed. We've all done it. Until the camera isn't really off at all. So here is Underpants Guy. who isn't aware that he's in the middle of a meeting with his camera on. Yeah, he probably won't be doing that again. It seems that pet owners need to be particularly careful. So here is a Zoom call where a cat stood in front of the camera, and cats are quite hard to move out of the way without getting rather angry, as we know. But that's not as bad as this judicial district court meeting where the judge's daughter turned on a cat filter, which he didn't know how to remove. In the full video, the judge had to explain to those present that he wasn't actually a cat. And finally, as well as the cat filter, there's the potato head filter as well, which caused problems during this meeting too. So there are some things to be sure to avoid. So I hope you've enjoyed this week. We'll see you again next week for Redefining Hybrid Work Part 2, The Changing Face of the Physical Office, where we'll actually talk about and show some of the tools that we found particularly effective in bridging the gap between office work and work from home. Thank you very much for your time.